Uh, well, thank you for the opportunity today. I'm speaking to you from Jakarta, Indonesia, where I currently live. The title is Careers in International Development and Job Focus on Emerging Markets. And I added energy because that's a particular I work in. I should also add that I am a consultant, so I'll also focus mostly on the consulting side of international development. There are some careers in the funding agencies themselves, which I'll describe in a bit, as well as working for not-for-profit or foundations who also work in this space. Although there are some similarities, each sector is going to be different. So if you're interested in the health sector or education, water and sanitation, or other areas, then some of what I will describe may not be relevant, but happy to answer any questions that you might have that is outside the presentation. Sorry. So let me start with that up. It looks like it's moving.
Do you need any help?
Well, I'm seeing it on my screen, but you're not seeing it on yours, so I don't know what the.
We can see the presentation. Maybe you can just go to the slideshow, and then we can organize a bigger screen.
Okay, so you can see now, yeah?
Yes.
So this is a snapshot of the company I work for, Tetra. It's a US-based company out of Pasadena, California. It's traded on the NASDAQ stock exchange. Its work in international development started probably maybe 15 years ago now. It was primarily US-based engineering and environmental science consulting services. But they acquired my company, which was PA Consulting Group, in 2010. So at that point, they began doing international development in the energy sector. This is my profile of this alumni of the SUMAS program. Graduated in 2018. And I have a BA.
I'm sorry, but we cannot see the profile. Can you maybe switch to the next slide?
Oh, I did. Let's see. Let's try it on. How about now? It's on my screen.
We're still on the page of the company. Yes, okay. Now we can see it.
Now? All right, great. I see how I'm doing this. Yeah. Okay, so sorry. My profile, education, MBA from SUMAS from 2018, and a Bachelor's of Arts in Energy and Environmental Management back in 1982. In reverse order, I'm currently a vice president, and before that, a director at Tetra Tech, ES Inc. Since 2010. Prior to that, I was with PA Consulting Group and its U.S. subsidiary, PA Government Services, where I was a vice president, partner, and previously there as a managing consultant. For a little more than a decade before that, I was with a company called Hagler Bailly, again in the capacity of a managing consultant or principal. Before that, I ran my own consulting business for a couple of years in the late 1980s, called the Renewable Resources Associates, and started my career out of college with a nonprofit policy advocacy or policy research organization called the Renewable Energy Institute. So just in terms of a progression of consulting engagements, you never necessarily start out doing what you end up doing. And if you have a career as long as I've had, which is now spans about 35 years, you end up following kind of the market in terms of where they, in this case, the development assistance organizations are programming their funding, but also changes in this case, the energy market. So I started in renewable energy. From there, added energy efficiency, mostly in buildings, but also in some other sectors as well. Then I moved into industrial environmental management. These were designing programs for governments, pollution control, but also some of the market-based incentives or pollution prevention type programs. Then for about 10 or 12 years, I did sustainable tourism, mostly in the Caribbean, some in Egypt and the Red Sea, China, South Africa. Climate change, primarily focusing on greenhouse gas mitigation from the energy sector. Then into electric utility, renewable energy integration, because most of these technologies are connected to or are electricity producing and therefore at any scale are typically connected to the utility network. Then more recently through industrial decarbonization, net zero emissions, and probably within the last year or year and a half, environment, social governance, or ESG. On the right side of the slide shows the different countries that I've worked in. Out of these, I've lived in Jamaica and Indonesia. The others were all what we call short-term technical assistance or intermittent assignments where we travel to the country to do work. These are just some of the organizations that are in the sources of funding, basically, of international development work that I've had as clients. Not all of these, but most of these I've had as clients over my career. USAID, for National Development, is our primary client, and is who I am working for currently in Indonesia. GIZ, the German aid technical assistance agency, FCDO from the UK, DFAT from Australia, MFAT from New Zealand, EU, DANITA, World Bank. The international finance institutions typically are offering loans, but oftentimes there's technical assistance either as part of those loans or in preparation for loans. So that would be the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, KfW, and AFD. GAP is a fairly recently established organization led by the MacArthur Foundation, but they are actually funding quite a lot of work in Africa, and they're also here in Southeast Asia. Again, focused on kind of climate change mitigation. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is another private foundation that's active in this area. The African Development Bank, and then the Nordic Environment Finance Corporation, or NEFCO. So some of these we have as our clients for our company, but I haven't necessarily had as my clients. What are some of the skills that either a consulting organization like myself, like Tetra Tech, would be looking for in terms of either new hires or recruiting from competitors or from others who are already in the consulting business. First and foremost is business development and proposal writing. Probably the only job security you have in this business is the ability to go out and win work, which is, either unsolicited or solicited proposals that might be competitive or awarded on a sole source basis. But there's nothing that happens unless you're good at the first part. Not all. Once you get into an organization, you'll have whole departments or units that are responsible for business development and proposal writing, but often the technical writing relies on the consulting staff itself. Some industry and or government experience. I'm kind of unique in that I've spent my whole career as a consultant right out of college. But it's, particularly if you're offering advice to a government or like an electric utility, you have much more credibility if you spent time in a similar organization, typically in your home country. Project management and or professional services skills. Often you start by offering, certain areas of expertise. So you're kind of an advisor in a particular niche area. Over time, you move into project management, in which case then you're organizing a team of interdisciplinary professionals to deliver a particular service or product to the client. Some in terms of education, some professional qualifications, the particular ones that are useful for in the energy field: law, economics, finance, public administration, engineering, and communications. Interpersonal skills. This is really about how to both identify the needs of the and I'll show you the difference between clients and counterparts in a minute. The client being the funding agency and the counterpart being the beneficiary, the organization that you're typically being paid to provide advice to. But having those skills is critical because just doing the analysis, the research and the analysis, and presenting sound recommendations, much of it needs to be delivered in a way that convinces particularly the counterpart of the value of those recommendations, and particularly how to implement them. Effective communication skills, particularly around presentations, because a lot of times particularly in this day and age, a lot of information is shared through presentations, and training, which is often part of what we call institutional capacity building, which is typically part of almost every assignment. Some country or regional knowledge. It's kind of an old adage: the longer you work in a country, the more likely you are to stay there, because you become kind of an expert. You understand their legal and institutional frameworks. You have a network of contacts within the country that allow you to do business there, and you become a more credible implementer for these projects to particularly the funding agencies, because you have that country experience. And then finally, languages, which is an important part. I have colleagues who are Spanish speakers, and they've spent virtually their entire careers in Latin America. But having language skills is certainly a plus. Fortunately for at least the English-speaking countries, English is kind of a business language, so you can get a certain amount done by only knowing English. But over time, learning languages allows you to perform your jobs better. What are the main differences between kind of traditional consulting on the right side of the screen, and what I would call more commercial consulting and development consulting on the left side of the screen. Starting with the right-hand side, this is typically you have a contract agreement between the consulting company and the client or the organization that has sought those professional services, and then you provide the advice and professional service to the organization, so that you're meeting essentially the client needs. So it's a very one-on-one relationship. In terms of development consulting, there's typically 3 entities involved. There's the funding agency called the donor international finance institution or foundation that's actually providing the funding. They will have a contract agreement, or could be a grant agreement if it's being done through a not-for-profit, with the organization, the consulting company, or again could be a foundation or other organization delivering those services under an agreement. Then you, as the consulting company, provide the advice and professional services to a beneficiary, so it's almost like a third party, and then that beneficiary typically has a grant agreement between, if it's a technical assistance project like the one I have here in Indonesia, essentially the grant agreement that says that, in our case, the United States government will provide a certain amount of funding to the host country government to provide various services. However, those are provided in kind because they're paid directly by the donor agency to the consulting company. So this, sometimes can provide challenges to you as a consultant, because you basically have two clients. Ideally, the funding source, the donor organization, really seeks that you are meeting the needs of the beneficiary. So you really have to just focus on the beneficiary. But a lot of these organizations are looking for some sort of reform or other outcomes, in which case then they often get involved in, how you deliver your work, certainly monitoring and evaluating the outcomes of that work. So it's sometimes a challenge to navigate between what I would consider to be 2 clients, one being the funding or donor organization, the other being the host country beneficiary. And that is the last slide I have. So what I can do is shut this off, and then happy to take questions from anyone.
I can see one question in the chat from Jason. This question is about your motivation of taking SUMAS course in your career.
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. So I was the chief of party, which is the team leader of a project here in Indonesia. This was around would have been 2015 or so. I had already had the position, and then we rebid the project, and I only had a bachelor's degree and 30 years of experience, and the requirements for the chief of party was a master's degree and 10 years of experience. So actually, I took the SUMAS course while I was, doing the job on the condition that I would have the master's degree. And SUMAS was a good choice for me because I could do it remotely by distance from Indonesia. But as I took the program, so that was a very narrow interest, which was I needed a master's degree in order to keep the job I already had. But as I took the courses, what I realized was that I had kind of learned much of the same subjects on sustainability through work assignments. And I'd never really had the structured education and introduction to kind of the standard tools and approaches that the SUMAS program gave. So it turned out I learned a lot more than I thought I would, but my motivation was really just to kind of keep my job, which is probably not what most of the students at SUMAS have.
Thank you very much for answering. If there are any other questions, please post them in the chat so we will be able to see them. And then again, Jason is asking any recommendation for someone with a business background and no technical background?
Well, I think I mean, there are, I mean, and when you say business, I mean, would that include finance or banking or anything else, or is it just like working from within an organization, like a company previously? Just curious what business background maybe. International hospitality. Okay, there you go. So you're probably ideal for sustainable tourism. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a place to start, certainly, because your background in that sector gives you some, certainly some advantages, because you would typically know how hotels or accommodations operate, how businesses. I mean, I had to teach myself all about hospitality in order to deliver what were energy, environment, and waste management services to the hotel sector. So, that might be certainly a place to start. The other is, if you've got good analytical, good management, good leadership skills, you can often learn different disciplines through different consulting assignments. So the obvious choice would be to go back and apply what you've learned from SUMAS back into the hospitality sector, and there's actually quite a bit going on there in greening hotels, and we develop certification programs for destinations and hotel chains and so on. So you could kind of go back into that, but if the intent is to kind of change careers, move out of hospitality, then there's, you can apply that same business background to the types of consulting projects that involve like enterprise development, project management. I mean, many of the skills you would have would be transferable there.
Thank you very much for your answer. And we have another question from Isabel. Did you prefer working as a consultant or being now part of a company?
Well, I think I did it the wrong way around, to be honest with you. I started working as a consultant, like literally I started my own consulting company at age 27. I was working for a nonprofit. I got a call one night from the state of Hawaii who offered me to work for them directly on a project that was related to what little I knew at that point, which was organizing big international conferences. So they were my only client. They were willing to pay me what I was currently earning and only working a third of the time. And so I basically left the nonprofit and started my own business. And the challenge in doing that, especially early in your career, is that you don't have the advantage of working with teams of people who have different experience from yourself. There's a lot to be gained from being part of an organization. You can get some of that if you're a consultant working on a consulting engagement that has a team together. But within a company, there's a natural kind of organizational side of it, which is, where there's support, there's typically management, there's technical specialists, there's support, there's, researchers. And so, if I was to do it over again, I would, I'd wait, and probably that's maybe the next stage of my career is to become a consultant again. But working for a company, you're able to pursue much larger projects that you wouldn't as an individual. You're able to write the proposals that allow you to kind of define your own opportunities. That back to the beginning where I mentioned, writing business development and writing proposals is key. That's been the secret for me for 30-something years. I've never had to rely on anyone else to find consulting work for me. So I would always be the one who wrote the proposals. So I'd pursue the projects I liked and the places I liked, and would write myself into a role that I wanted to do. As a consultant, you're often at the mercy of somebody else who's written a project proposal and they're bringing you in. Or again, if you're a consultant directly to an organization, as an independent consultant to an organization, then they're certainly going to be looking to you to have all the expertise needed to help solve their problems. So as long as you have that, that's not a problem. But often the work can go into areas where maybe you're less familiar, in which case then again it would be better to be part of a team, in my view.
If there are any other questions, thank you first of all. Yes, I think we do, right?
Yeah. How feasible is it being an independent development consultant? Early in your career, difficult. And in fact, when I joined that company, Hagler by E, I did my research. I figured I wanted to do I was doing work domestically. I had clients, a couple of clients in the United States. I wanted to work internationally. So I did my research to figure out what companies had the most, contracts, or who is the market leaders in, at least at that point in the energy field. And so I was also an editor for a magazine at the time. So I co-authored an article with somebody in that company that then led to a job offer to join them. I think becoming an independent development consultant is probably easier to do at the end of your career than at the beginning, just because, again, what you offer as an independent consultant is really the sum of all of your knowledge and experience. So if that's early in your career, then that can be fairly limited. If you do that toward the end or well into your career, then you can draw on lots of different experiences and different consulting assignments. You certainly have more confidence in directly engaging with a client or decision maker, and quite honestly, often you've got the credentials also that allows you to get that work in the first place. But it's certainly possible to be an independent development consultant. We have databases of them that we turn to, but typically we're looking for somebody very specialized, and typically also in areas that are that we don't already have that expertise in-house. But there are certainly, the one that we use is called DevX out of the United States, which is I guess this development exchange is where it comes from. But there, you can put up your CV there. You can search for people through there. It's kind of like it was LinkedIn before LinkedIn. I mean, it allowed you to find both employers, to find to recruit individuals, and vice versa for individuals to find opportunities to pursue.
Thank you. There's one more question. Yeah. Can you share about
I can see them.
Valuable lesson you learned at SUMAS that you managed to implement in your work?
Well, oddly enough, one of the assignments I have for starting in 2024 is to help the national electric utility here in Indonesia establish a sustainability academy. So I certainly expect to go back to a lot of my classwork from SUMAS to be able to draw on in terms of the the types of studies or types of analysis, the different aspects of sustainability. We did probably I would say the most helpful for me was, I think I don't remember what the course was, but it was where you did a kind of a joint business plan. That was very helpful for me because I didn't really have a background in business. So the other team members who were with me had, one had a background in finance, and the other one had a background in kind of corporate planning. So between the three of us, we developed actually a business plan for a inbound tour operator in Southeast Asia. So I brought the kind of hospitality and tourism piece to it. But it was helpful. That was, a good lesson for me, because now I saw how these different people coming from different backgrounds, different careers, all kind of are converging around this issue of sustainability and how we each see it from different perspectives.
Thank you. There's one more question from Isabel. Did you find it easier to offer consultancy in emerging markets than more mature ones? And what was the driver to work more in emerging markets?
Yeah, so ironically, and maybe others have the same experience, but I've never, how do I say this? I haven't essentially had to apply for a job since 1983. So every job opportunity I have is really come from, the current work I'm doing, from a client that wanted to hire me directly, or in the last 20-something years, almost 30 years, from a succession of acquisitions of companies that I was working at. So I made a conscious decision, I guess it was probably 1989, that I did want to, I had done some traveling. I enjoyed the, kind of cultural differences of being in, outside, the United States. And so, as I say, I joined a company that had already the contracts or had the projects that had the funding, basically, in the field that I was interested in. So, there have been probably a half a dozen times during my career where actually I decided I wanted to work in the United States. I was kind of tired of traveling. I would like to be able to commute, 20 minutes or to an office, and that would be where I would deliver my services. But the challenge that I faced was kind of the more you worked outside, in my case, the United States, the less, the less relevant my experience was to kind of re-enter that job market. So I used to joke that I knew the environmental regulations in the Philippines better than I knew them in the United States. I mean, I would try to stay on top of things, but it's one of those things that once you start down consulting career, it takes you places maybe you didn't plan on, or the longer you do it, the more of an expert you become, or more qualified you become for that, but actually the less qualified you become perhaps to work in, when I call mature markets, I'm thinking of kind of like Europe and US. I mean, I know people who do both, and so that's just kind of from my own personal experience. I did continue to do assignments in Hawaii just because I liked working there. So, but other than that, all the work I've done has been outside the U.S., even though some of the sources of funding, like World Bank and Inter-American Development, USAID, are all based in the U.S.
There is also a final question from Jason. He would like to have your recommendations on good pathways and application. Has been applying for a while, and he would like to find some opportunities in this direction.
Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, I just described it's like I haven't had to apply or haven't been successful at applying for jobs, so I'm not sure I'm the best person to recommend. If I was kind of to turn it around and, because I see applicants frequently, or we're recruiting, and so we'll get cover letters and CVs from individuals. The first thing is don't embellish. This is like this kind of CV 101. Be honest about your experience. Be brief. If you can keep a CV to 1 page, that makes it easier for and highlight what it is that you brought to the different organizations you've worked with, or what skills you've developed through those. I think persistence, certainly, following up on applications, finding out if there's any new development, even getting an opportunity to learn, from the organization, what other opportunities, oftentimes you're trying to find a way to separate yourself from what are many other applicants. But in the end, oftentimes at least the screening part of getting to a second stage or getting to an interview is based on, what somebody sees in a CV. Rarely do they read a cover letter, or often it's separated so the CV can get circulated. But so I wouldn't spend too much time on a cover letter when applying for a job. One opportunity might be to actually go try to get work through the funding agency side first, through who like the donor organizations or development banks, and then from there move into consulting, because at least now you understand one client and you could help that organization pursue business with that client. I know there's, and these have all emerged since I've been kind of looking for jobs, but there are, various channels for, seeking jobs. And there are many places people look. They use the different services to, LinkedIn is actually, I use actually LinkedIn to do a lot of recruiting now. So, trying to find people in organizations that you'd like to work with, kind of make connections with them, and try to do it kind of informally first. And then, as a job might come up, or even just approach them, are there any opportunities in your organization? I find people to be pretty straightforward as long as, the requests are reasonable. But I'm sure there's many other channels as well.
I think these are all our questions. If anyone has any other questions, please drop them. And I guess it is already the time of our session, right?
So one thing I can offer, I think I even put up my LinkedIn contacts, and I'm happy if you have any follow-up questions, you can just connect with me and send me any specific questions you might have. If there are opportunities with my company, I can certainly steer you to. We have kind of a equal opportunity employment policy, so all of our jobs are posted. But I'm happy to steer people to it. Again, I'm part of a much bigger organization. There's other parts of Tetra Tech that work in governance, in anti-corruption, in agriculture, water, and waste management. So, I think that would be the first place to start, is try to find an organization you'd like to work with, and that usually comes from finding a sector that you're interested in, learn as much as you can about the organization, kind of, try to make some connections if you can, and probe a little bit about, what they're doing. And then, try to find that first opportunity. Like I said, mine was an internship in 1983, and it all kind of came from that. So that's the other part, is that, don't overthink. Don't overthink what you want to, where you want to end up. Better to kind of just start the journey and see where it takes you. And unless it's taking you in a direction you don't want to be, and you want to make a kind of mid-career change. But maybe I've had the unique opportunity to never necessarily have to look for a job, but just be able to, identify opportunities and kind of pursue them through the organizations that I worked with.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity and for your recommendations. Just maybe the final comment from Jason. He's also based in Australia, and he's Australian.
Okay. Well, I just came back from the Gold Coast 2 weeks ago. We had our Asia Pacific Division meeting. Tetra Tech has acquired the companies RPS, Ecologic Australia, and another company that's in the high performance buildings. So there's we do have a sister company, Coffee, and Cause, C-O-Z, I don't know what their formal name is, that Cause is based in Australia and does work for DFAT. So if you want to share your CV, I'm happy to kind of circulate it there, or try to find some points of entry for you. We're your neighbor here in Indonesia. We see lots of Australians in Bali. But I think well, there's the focus was, for this group particularly, was kind of Pacific Islands now, starting with Papua New Guinea and then into the Pacific Islands. But also, there's a big DFAT program here in Indonesia that actually we're bidding on. So if we're lucky, we'll get to work for DFAT again. But I'm based in Indonesia, Jakarta, Indonesia, and I'm from the United States. For clarities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill, for your session, for all your answers,
Sure.
for recommendations and career advice.
Okay, no problem. And as I said, happy to help the alumni from SUMAS to, SUMAS helped me keep my job, so I'm happy to help others find theirs. So.
Thank you. Thank you. And all the best for the rest of your day. And we will also share this recording, this session, with everyone.
Wonderful. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao.